Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully, we'll have a couple more people join on once 2 o'clock hits for us. But in the meantime, we just wanted to do some introduction, just see who's on the phone call, and also introduce ourselves. So, Philip, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off, can you tell us a little bit about where you're coming from and your Enactus experience? We'd like to know your name, your school, the position you hold on the Enactus team, and have you been to a competition before?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, great. So I'm Philip Sukram. I am an assistant professor at St. Peter's University. I'm a professor under the accounting department, so I teach accounting. St. Peter's University just started its first Enactus team, so we have 2 members on the team so far. I have not been to a competition. Just recently, this past weekend, we attended the regional summit at Rutgers University. So it was a really good experience for us to get our feet wet and just get an understanding of what Enactus is. So we're fresh in this competition.
Great, cool. Thanks. Sandra, would you mind sharing?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you perfectly.
Awesome. So I am Sandy Castle, and I am a business management professor at Evangel University, which is in Springfield, Missouri. Our Enactus team has been around for several years. We have been active in the past regional and national competitions. Let's see, was there anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you. Okay, and then we also are going to have a guest speaker who's going to go through a couple of the slides. Her name is Dana. Dana, will you go ahead and give us a little introduction about yourself?
Hi, yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I'm Dana Tungpalan. I'm from Binghamton University. I was our team's treasurer last year and vice president this year. We have been competing for the past, I want to say like 5-6 years. I don't know if I missed anything there, but.
No, that's good.
Okay.
Perfect. My name is McKenna Manspeaker. I am one of the newer regional program managers. I just joined in November. I cover the Southeast Territory. I actually have been to competitions myself as a student. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and so I was an Enactus student there. I loved my experience. And also, once I graduated school, I judged at the regional competitions. So I feel like I have a good bit of experience with competitions, which is great.
Yeah, McKenna has like literally every perspective of competition, so she's a good person to have on here. And then I'm Becky Hoy. I am the regional program manager for the Northeast. So honestly, I already know most of you, I think, but excited to have you guys on and talk about getting ready for competition. Do you want to kind of go into the agenda, sort of what we're going to cover?
Yes, sounds good. And is everybody able to see the screen? So we have events going on at National Expo that we want to cover. Also, another important topic we like to bring up is roles for your team members. So other than just competing, what else can you be doing while you're at competition or while you're at Expo? And a big portion of our presentation is going to cover, competing team tips. So that's going from the script, aka what you'll be saying in your presentations, the media that you're presenting on, PowerPoint, etc., the annual report, and also the question and answer preparation for your presentation.
Can you guys hear me now? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, there you are.
Sorry. I'm trying to work on the school laptop, but there's no video camera. So.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, can you just tell us what school you go to? Are you a student? What year? And have you had competition experience?
Okay, so my name is Max Cohen. I go to Monmouth University. I'm the president of Enactus at Monmouth University. I'm a senior, and yes, I've had presentation experience.
Awesome. Nice. Cool. So we got a nice mix on the webinar today, so that's great. And also, at any point in time that you have questions, don't feel like you have to hold them. I feel like Becky and I both welcome questions at any time. We kind of want this to be a conversation if it can be, but if not, we have all the content to give you. So I'll go ahead and get started. And Becky is going to talk about the events happening.
Yeah, so we have some kind of exciting new events happening at Expo this year. So even for those of you who have been, this might be a little bit new. But I guess just to kind of start, those sort of top 3 in the top row there are more of our sort of traditional events, right? So we have our competition, So 3 rounds of competition happening over the course of the event. We also have our career fair. So I think I saw on average, we typically have about 40 partner companies attending, and usually a decent amount of students get interviews and even get job offers on the spot. So it's a pretty cool event and definitely a cool experience for students on the team. And then networking kind of in general, this is a great experience, and I'm sure Philip can probably attest at the Rutgers event. All of our events are really cool opportunities for students to get to know other teams and get to learn about what other teams are working on and to connect and share contact info. So that's always, I think, one of the really exciting aspects of our events is the chance for students to network. We also have opportunities for our faculty to network. So we have a faculty advisor lunch, I believe, and I'm trying to remember what day that's on. On Monday. On Monday, we have our Sam Walton Fellow lunch. So again, kind of a cool opportunity for you advisors to connect with advisors from other teams, learn about what other advisors are working on, and also just kind of be able to share best practices and tips for newer advisors. So cool opportunities for networking. The bottom 2 events here are our new events. So the first one is our project showcase. This is geared towards projects that might not be ready for competition or ready for presentation. So this is going to be in the same area as the career fair. We're going to have up to 50 tables where teams will be able to present on a project not in the traditional competition sense, but with just a straight up kind of trifold poster board. They can be standing there at times. They don't have to be standing there, but sort of giving information on a project plan. So maybe something that, again, is still in the ideation phase, but you haven't implemented yet. So I think this is a really cool opportunity for newer teams who maybe are sort of just getting started and have an idea of what they want to do, and they want to get feedback on it and potentially collaboration on it, but they're just not quite ready to present. Similarly, it's really good for teams who are maybe a little more established but have projects kind of in the pipeline. It's a great way to get team members who aren't on the presentation team involved because they can be working on the project showcase. Any questions on that? Okay. The application to participate in the project showcase is open. It's pretty straightforward. Basically, you just have to provide the plan for the project you're going to be talking about, and then you get some kind of information on what your poster should look like and things like that. So secondly, we have our reverse pitch competition, which I think is a really exciting opportunity as well. Teams can send, I know initially it was teams were only going to be sending up to 2 people to participate in this event, but I think they've kind of decided they're going to be a little more lenient about that. But essentially this event starts on Saturday. So students will sign up individually to participate, and that sign up is open as well, and we can send you the links to all of these if you're interested. But basically students will go on Saturday and sit and listen to a panel. We don't have exactly who the panel is going to be yet, but ideally it's going to be a representative from one of our partner companies, a representative from a nonprofit organization, and a representative from a civic organization. And they're going to present on some of the challenges that they're facing in their industries, specific challenges. And then the students are going to have the next 2 days to come up with a pitch in response to one of those problems or challenges. So they will basically be able to meet at any point throughout the event with the rest of their team and come up with their pitch. And then Tuesday, they'll present the pitch back to the panel, and there will be winners chosen and awards given out and things like that. Did I explain that? Yeah, really? Okay. Any questions on either of those?
Yeah, I have a question. Is there like a grant or something for people to travel, if possible, if our teams have funding?
We currently don't have any travel grants for nationals as of now.
Okay.
We can definitely later on, if we have some time, talk about some strategies for fundraising for travel. But the short answer is no. Sadly, we don't have any travel grants this year.
Fortunately, not this year.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Next, we're going to have Dana talk about roles. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just jump right into it. So I've been competing with my team for about 2 years now, and I've just realized there's a lot of different roles when it comes to competition, and each team has their own process depending on team size and how comfortable you are with delegating work amongst that team. But I have to say that every role is important, but I think that the presenters are going to be especially valuable because you can have the most incredible PowerPoint projects or what have you, but if you have kind of lackluster presenters, I feel like the impact of the presentation might not be as strong. So when you're going on to recruit presenters, at least what we do over at my school is that we do 2 different rounds of auditions. We first do an individual speaking presentation just to see, can they present in front of a small audience, and then we do a second round for just to suss out team chemistry. I can discuss that later if you want to, but what I've found with team chemistry is if you have people who speak well as individuals, but you don't have a team that complements itself, things can get a little bit haywire. So when it comes to presenters, if somebody's overpowering in the team, you can find another member who maybe brings a more subdued tone to the table. So it's not just about the individual performance themselves, but seeing if they can work within a team. And again, I feel like that is probably one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable, when it comes to competition. We might do this a little bit differently when it comes to the technical team. Again, everybody's different. But these are the members who are going to make sure that the presentation runs smoothly. We have them create our annual reports and the team biographies, which I think we'll talk about later. And then we have our team also just make the visual presentation that runs in the background during the presentation. With this, it's helpful to recruit marketing and graphic design students for this. For some reason, they tend to be very tech savvy. So if you have, some of your members, maybe they don't know how to do it, just go outside of your team, go find some other people who maybe know how to do it, shoot out some emails to different school departments. You will be surprised by turnout. But as a side note to this, prior to presentation, just make sure multiple times that your projector is working. Make sure that your laptop has been charged and updated, because Windows will do that thing where it updates mid-presentation. So make sure that doesn't happen. Make sure everything has batteries. I've just heard horror stories of Teams presentations just not turning on or it not properly calibrating to the projector screen, and you probably don't want that. So just be extra careful. Find some people who know how to work those things. I personally don't. We have a CS major. I'm just help me all the time. As for coaches, just have somebody who will provide signals to the presenters. This is usually just one person who's maybe good at public speaking. Maybe they've competed in the past. If somebody needs to slow down, they'll shoot up a hand or something, or if they need them to speak up, they'll do something like this. We usually have our coaches time practice runs to make sure you're within the time constraint, because you can drag on without realizing it. And then we also have the coaches create questions for the question and answer period, so that if a curveball comes at our team, they kind of know how to respond like that. And it doesn't need to be specifically one person. Lots of schools have public speaking labs if you want to use that as a resource, or even contact some theater students and professors, because they're really good at the whole drama thing of things. So definitely, ask them to critique your presentation. And we spoke a little bit about this with, I skipped team audience. I'll go back to that in a bit. But with the advisors, we were saying earlier, there's going to be different events. You can network with other advisors, and it's honestly, it's such a cool way to foster new connections. Ask the advisor to check out your presentation practices, run the script by them, run the PowerPoint by them, just everything you could possibly run by them. The more resources you have on the table, the better, I've found. And then when it comes to team audience, I know some teams like to go as spectators. If that's the case, just take your entire team as a team audience, but just see if you can get people to take notes during your presentation, and go check out other teams' presentations if you're interested in some of their projects, or maybe they're similar to your team, because the more fresh perspectives you can get on future project growth and development, the more outside of the box you can get. Just watching other teams and seeing how they operate can be super helpful for that. And you can also have the team audience just be there to kind of test out your presentation team on the Q&A. And lastly, I'm dragging on a little bit, but we do have the networkers. These are just going to be members of your team whose goal is going to be, let's network with other teams and make connections. And this could be a role in itself, but I really encourage my entire team to be a networker. I tell them, like, if you're not walking out of this event with at least like 3 more LinkedIn connections, you can walk home or something. But like, no. But because it's a high pressure situation, but I'm hoping that a lot of people are there to have fun. So you can use Enactus as a common link to connect with other teams. Like, a lot of teams are going to be open to grabbing dinner or whatever. You just walk up to them and you're like, hey. They're probably just going to be open to things. Everybody's very welcoming. So just the whole gist of this, you can learn a lot from other people who aren't in Enactus about like projects, about their processes, about anything, especially if you don't realize that you've been locked into a kind of certain mentality as to how you've been operating. But I think that's all I had to say on that.
Yeah, that was a great overview.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, you can totally tell that Dana has had very good competition experience, and I think it's because she, like you said, made yourself that networker. If everybody takes on that role, you are going to walk away from this competition with something more than just the experience of competition itself, whether that's, connections or, just networking, new LinkedIn members. That's a really good perspective. Thanks, Dana.
No problem.
Okay, so next we're going into a little bit more of the technical side of things, and this is really geared towards getting teams, their competition team, prepared. And so what we're going to focus on first is the script. So the script is your team's opportunity to tell the story of what you've accomplished over the year. We emphasize the word script because we want you to be authentic in your presentation, as opposed to just running down a list of statistics and numbers and outcomes. So when the delivery sounds less like a recall of scripted lines and more like a memory of some experience, you just have a better chance of grabbing the judge's attention in a competition where judges hear between 5 to 7 presentations in the league. So authenticity becomes a really huge factor in what they remember. And we see a lot of success when teams incorporate collaboration, as Dana said, in their script writing. Pull in individuals, that this is their major, it's outside of the business school. So it's really great to pull in people who are, have way more experience in persuasive writing or public speaking, speech writing, things to that nature. We really emphasize on that. And, it's not just a pass-off, it's a collaborative effort of the project leaders, the project managers, share that experience of what happened over the given time of this project with those individuals who have the talent in writing. And then that is whenever we see the most successful scripts being written. And so to go one more level down, and Dana touched on this as well. So in terms of writers, when forming the writing scripts team, don't be afraid to go out and recruit new students. Recruiting from the English or marketing department or even theater department, it's pretty incredible what happens whenever you reach outside of the Enactus network. I know I love the Enactus bubble. I think it's a great group of people, but we always want more collaboration with individuals that are from outside of, business schools especially. And so yeah, I don't want to repeat too much on what Dana said and also a lot of you guys actually do have competition experience, which is great. So let me just touch again on the theme. So a lot of teams that have a variety of projects that have happened over the year, it becomes kind of difficult, then again, put it into this 15-minute presentation when you've done a project that dealt with poverty, you've done a project that's dealt with water. So how do you turn that into a story that you can then easily present. So that's when a theme or direction of your entire presentation kind of comes into play. So a couple examples that we've had in the past, when teams have a variety of projects and they come to write their presentation, they set a theme. And one example that we have is finding our detour. So that year, everything seemed to go wrong with projects, but they had to find a creative way to figure out, how to make this project happen. They found a detour. And so somehow they incorporate that language and speaking to finding a detour onto every single project that they've done. It also helps whenever you're doing the media to kind of have this theme. It's great for visuals. And again, it just helps those judges kind of remember the story that you were trying to tell if they have that overarching theme in their head saying, oh, Evangel University had the theme about, planting the seed, something to that nature. So that's why we really do emphasize a theme. It's again, not a requirement, not necessary, but just one of those little factors that really helps make your presentation memorable. And last thing to touch on is the timeline. So, start writing your scripts as soon as possible. And those of you with experience, I'm sure know this. A lot of times we get students, give pushback. We haven't received all the data. We haven't figured out exactly how much this project has impacted X, Y, and Z. And we get that. But you can kind of create a shell. You get their overarching theme. You know what projects you're going to present on. And you can start writing the script, but then just leave a little area for where you will eventually plug in those numbers later. That way you can start practicing this presentation, giving the presentation in advance to your business advisory board or to an organization outside of Enactus. That way you can start practicing and then go ahead and plug those numbers in later. So that's one of the reasons that we emphasize start this as soon as possible. So yeah, and another best practice tool when writing your script is to use the judging criterion, which I'm going to briefly cover now. The Enactus judging criterion, and I feel very confident in talking about this because I was in the judge's seat for a bit. For 2 years, I judged at regional competitions, and of course, hindsight's 20/20. Had I had known that experience whenever I was an actual student, oh my gosh, I think presentation team would have gone a lot differently. But the second you walk into judges orientation, you're faced with this question. This is what you as a judge are trying to answer. Which Enactus team most effectively used entrepreneurial action to empower people to improve their livelihoods in an economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable way? That is what we're asked. And so then when given this green sheet, that's exactly what's on here. This is what we have in our heads the entire time that we're looking at a presentation happening. So this is it. There's no hidden secret. This is available to you on the Enactus Training Center. This is exactly what a judge will have in front of them when you are getting evaluated during competition. And essentially, the best way to write your script is to make sure that the judges are able to answer these questions. When it comes to seeing opportunity, did the team have a target audience? Did the team define a plan? Do they understand or address the current livelihood of the situation? Did the team take entrepreneurial action? What was that entrepreneurial action and how can you rate that? Enabling progress. Did the team measure and report direct and indirect outcomes? How did they do that? Were they accurate in measuring that? So the more that you're able to predict what the judge is going to ask and answer those questions in your presentation, the better they are, one, to remember you, but two, to score you, obviously. So on that same token, I'm going to pass it over to Becky, who's going to go into a little more detail about each of these subjects to figure out, what is the best and most cohesive way to present on them.
So if you have any questions about the judging process or anything, don't be afraid to interrupt. But essentially, I'm just going to touch on some of those sections that were in the green sheet that McKenna just showed. So all of these are really important to emphasize in your presentation, right? Because like McKenna said, that's what they're looking at on the green sheet. So how do you define entrepreneurial action? So we have a definition up here on the slide: behavior in response to a judgmental decision under uncertainty about a possible opportunity for profit. So it's really important to show the judges that you not only created social change, but that you also had an an economic impact with your project. So the student handbook, the Enactus student handbook, has a good kind of little sentence that I thought I would read. Examples of entrepreneurial action are, but not limited to, pioneering new approaches and designs, using innovative solutions, developing new opportunities, constantly striving to substantially enhance any existing projects, utilizing industry experts, and much more. So again, the judges are looking for you to not only create social value within a community, but also to create economic value. So we're going to talk about kind of how you're doing that through empowerment here on the next slide. So empowerment is a huge part of the Enactus criterion. And we talk a lot, at least internally, and I know when we talk with students about the difference between relief versus empowerment, right? So relief is obviously a response to something that's happened. So the example I think McKenna had, and which I agree is kind of my instant thought, is like response to a natural disaster is to provide food and water, right? Which is great and it's necessary, but that's relief, that's not empowerment. When we think of empowerment, we're thinking of basically providing people the tools to lift themselves up. So I know we always use that phrase like teach a man to fish, or give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish, he'll eat for life. And that's kind of a good way to think about it, I think. So you really want to make sure that you're emphasizing empowerment in your presentation, right? So I know we talked about at the Rutgers event, making the community that you're working with the hero of your story. So really showing how you're providing them the tools to lift themselves up. Does that make sense? Any questions on empowerment? Okay. So we're kind of looking at three sort of different categories that we want to focus on with improving livelihoods, which is again one of those little sections on the green sheet. So economically, how is your project economically sustainable? How will your constituents be able to continue improving their own lives after you've left the project alone? So have you created a business? Have you created new jobs? That's kind of the economic side of things. And then socially, how does your project improve social livelihoods? Have you improved health statistics in a community? Have you decreased food insecurity? Those are kind of the social aspects. And then environmentally, you definitely want to address any environmental impact your project has had, whether that's increasing clean water availability, decreasing waste in some process or something like that. And we definitely want to make clear that not every single project is going to be a star in each of these categories, right? That would be an amazing project, but typically that's not the case. So just highlight what the strengths of the project are, I think would be my advice. Anything to add on that? Okay. So it's great to tell the judges we had huge economic impacts in this community, but you're definitely going to need to back that up, right, with measurements. So in order to kind of obviously prove to the judges that you really did the good work, you need to have some data and some numbers to back up those claims. So let's look at kind of some of the terms that you can use to talk about this in your story. So these are kind of some key words that you'll probably want to include in your presentation. So inputs are going to be the resources that your team put into the project. So this could be the time you put in, the money you put in, etc. Outputs are going to be the actions that you took. So I guess the example I would use for this that's kind of simple is, let's say you run a workshop and X number of people attend your workshop. Your output would be the one workshop and X number of people who received the information, right? That would be your output. Outcome is a little further down along the line, and that's, okay, what did those X number of people, how did they implement what they learned, and how did it affect their lives? Direct impact. So direct impact are the lives that your team has touched through the life of your project. So any thoughts on what the direct impact would be in that example I just gave with the workshops? Okay, so your direct impact would be those X number of people that attended your workshop, right, Philip? Oh, Philip's on.
Sorry.
Philip's on there.
Yeah, it would be, I guess, those people. I mean, outcome is what did those people learn and how to impact their lives. I guess direct impact is it has to be people you directly touched.
Right.
From the project itself. So if you improve some irrigation system of crops, I guess it would be that town itself that was directly affected from it.
Yeah, exactly. And even more specifically, like the farmers that you taught about the irrigation system. And then indirectly, those farmers might be able to improve their families' lives who didn't necessarily learn the information, but were indirectly impacted as a result.
Yeah.
And then reach are the number of people who have heard about your project. So let's say you post something on social media or a news story goes out and 1,000 people learn about your project. That's awesome, but that's not impact, that's reach. Again, just some kind of good terms to know and to utilize within your script. So kind of continuing onwards, and Dana, I don't know if you want to take over here, but Dana has some good kind of insight as obviously a member of the presentation team and a leader on her team about the media and preparing for media at competition.
Talking a little bit about media and all that, I kind of touched upon this when talking about the technical team earlier, but use the B-roll to just foster new connections with people around campus, like your graphic design majors, marketing majors, and the B-roll is just the footage that runs in the background when you're presenting. But I've realized that photographs and videos are going to make your presentation all the more impactful. So find students who can help you out with capturing these kind of moments, and always just be on the lookout for opportunities. Just take videos and photos all year long. You know, every event, it doesn't matter if there's one person there or like 50 people there, it's always going to be a great chance for footage. You know, take pictures of campus buildings or project sites, maybe even people in the community. Take pictures of your members with team t-shirts on. Just everything is fair game, and I think that everything is valuable. And I know a lot of teams will actually film testimonials from people that they've positively impacted it, that have been positively impacted by the Enactus team's projects. And the more personalized you can make everything feel, I think that's better. There was a little bit about, I don't know if it's in the next few slides or whatever. It might be this one, yeah. So there's a little bit, the second bullet point, it says about some low-cost options like iMovie and the Adobe Suite. Depending on the university, I know that some campuses actually offer certain programs for free. Like we get InDesign and I think PowerPoint for free. And a lot of these low-cost options are usually user-friendly. But if your team isn't familiar with the programs, again, you can find someone or certain groups of people who are familiar with them and use them as a resource. But if you can't do that, just make sure that you lock in whichever you want to do ahead of the event, just so you have plenty of time to become acquainted with the program, so you're not scrambling when competition rolls around. There's lots of tutorials floating around on the internet. YouTube has so many. But if you're using an internet-based program, again, like Enactus isn't going to provide internet, so please download your stuff directly to your computer, just to save yourself a headache. Because I've heard stories about people not having their presentations open just because they didn't download it to their computer, or the formatting, it got messed up. So just be prepared for that, I would say. Yeah, and so I spoke a little bit about AV equipment fails earlier, and unfortunately what I have to say is just be prepared for the worst. If it's not too costly, take a backup projector, or maybe you can like poke another team and just be like, hey, in the event that this possibly happens, would you be willing to lend us yours? Just have that backup plan. Maybe even have a secondary laptop that has the presentation downloaded onto it. But if you use a full video or a PowerPoint in your presentation, it doesn't matter which one you use, just make sure that you practice the timings as much as possible. if there's a certain line in the script that needs to be in sync with a certain part of the presentation, you just keep doing it over and over until your team can just do it flawlessly with their eyes closed. And we don't use video, our team, but if you are, what I've heard is that you can put in audio cues at certain parts of the presentation, like maybe there's like a soft ding in the background of the video that will kind of indicate where in the script the presenter should be. And then I know there are some teams who actually record their script, they audio record their script, they create the video, and they line it up with the audio so that everything, when they present up in front, it's all synchronized. Just make sure that everybody's comfortable with everything, and invite people to observe and critique your presentation. Just poke some theater professors and theater students. They help a lot with delivery. We've asked a couple of them, and they've just been so insightful as to how we may be doing some things wrong that we didn't know we were doing wrong. If you have a business advisory board, definitely ask them for feedback on presentation content, and ask them about how was the performance itself and not just the content alone. Even like drag your friends into it. I just think that the more people you can get, the better, because the more different perspectives you can get on that, you might be kind of surprised on the feedback from people who are outside of your team.
I guess you kind of shared this along the way, and sometimes this is just a great opportunity to share fails, and they've happened, we know about them, but I think Dana, you did a great job of kind of covering that throughout. But I'll open it up to anybody else if they have any experience, any like positive experience, negative experiences with their media.
I'm thinking about one. I think it was last Nationals. There was a team, I think they were in our pool or something, and their PowerPoint literally just didn't go on. I don't know what happened with that, but the second that happened, we were like, okay, the next year we're just gonna get a backup projector because I don't want that happening.
Right. Okay, next we're going to talk about the annual report. I'm going to touch on some of the more logistical type things, but then I'm going to pass it back over to Dana to go over some tips after this. So this is really important. I mean, these are just guidelines that you in a sense, have to follow. This is what you are allowed to give the judges when you walk into your presentation, no more. And that's really emphasized, no more. So the annual report itself can be in a couple different formats. Either 4 single sheet papers like this, or 2 of them printed on both sides, or a lot of teams will have kind of like a book that folds open with print on all 4 sides. It's just a great tool for the judges to have as a reference. It also gives you a chance to lightly overlap on some of your project information, but also, if there's a numerical statistic that you presented on but the judge doesn't remember, they can easily refer to this handbook, and that's going to be able just to tell your story more fluidly, and give that judges, that piece of backup that they need when they're trying to make a decision. And this is really important. If you do decide to use like a cover page or something to that nature, that absolutely will count as one of those sheets of paper. So only 4, no more, no less, including title, cut, and cover pages and things to that nature. Team bios, that must be a completely separate document, and you are allowed to bring that in addition to the annual report. So no project metrics can be on that. That is strictly just for a team, maybe a headshots, year information about that student, but absolutely no project type information on there. So these are a couple of the varieties that we have. We have these posted on the Enactus Training Center. These are just great examples of what nice, fluid annual reports look like. Yeah, this one, it only has 2 projects. You can break it down to as many as you want, but, a couple of things that just pop out to me are they're just visually appealing. It's easy to read, and if you have an answer, you kind of know exactly where to go. This is another variety we have that it just specifically lists, the entrepreneurial action, the empowerment, and the improving of livelihoods, which is exactly what's in the mind of the Enactus judges. So this is just another chance for you to easily lay out your project story and your team's story in a way that will resonate with all the Enactus guidelines. This is actually, a live document that we've had in the past of Utah Valley. So, front pages, a lot of the times teams like to include, their personal pictures, their team photos, their vision statement, things to that nature. And a lot of the times, we see the cover pages as just being like a nice introduction to who the team is. But then whenever you get to the inside, that's whenever you learn more about the projects. And again, we bring in the judges' criterion sheet because, again, what better way to format and lay out your projects than in the way that the judges are, perceiving them or supposed to be perceiving them. So if you list each of your projects and then hit on, the opportunity, taking action, enabling progress, and how you went about that, and throw in the numbers there, it just makes it that much easier for your team's story to be portrayed. We love to see relevant pictures in here, as Dana spoke to it, the B-roll. There's a lot that goes with seeing photos like that. That's just the real life student experience in addition to the real life impact that you're making with your projects. So yeah, and the back page is a great chance to showcase your team's financials. It's a very common theme that we see, and I think it speaks really well. Emphasizing just your project financials, but also your organization as a whole, how you look financially stable, and also a great chance to thank your sponsors and your partners, anybody who donated to you. This is just a great tool to have, even for promoting yourself in the future. To say, hey, look, my Enactus team has partnered with, all these organizations, and this is how healthy we are, this is how sustainable we are, and this is the impact that we've made. It's really just a great encompassing tool to not only present and give to the judges, but also just to have in your back pocket for future recruiting events when it comes to, say, whenever you go to recruit new students and they ask a simple question, well, what do you guys do? I mean, it's just that easy of a document to hand to them to take away to know what kind of an impact you make. And so, yeah, now just a couple easygoing tips, and I'll pass it over to Dana.
Okay. So for the annual report, I kind of like to think of it as the Spark Notes that you use when you're reviewing for an exam, because the presentations are going to be jam-packed with info, and if you only hear a presentation once, like the judges do, it's going to be kind of difficult for them to remember every single detail. So we kind of treat our annual report kind of like a team resume in a bit. We just highlight the most important details, namely like the biggest points of the project, need, action, impact. And with this, just keep it concise, yet detailed enough that someone can look at your annual report and be like, oh, right, I remember this project from the presentation, and I remember it because of X, Y, Z details. And again, just make sure that you're using outside resources to check your work. Don't just double check it, quadruple check it. Just the more eyes you can get on it, the better. Because the last thing you want is getting to competition and realizing you spelled project as project at every single copy of the annual report. So just make sure that you consistently check it even as you're going along. And then get other people outside of the team to double check the report as well, just so that make sure that they understand exactly what is this report trying to convey. Like, is it clear? Is it comprehensive? Even without having any prior knowledge of what Enactus does. Right. And also if you share annual reports around campus or just anybody really, it helps to get your name out there. And a lot of the annual reports are usually really clean and professional looking, so it definitely puts a few points in your basket. But again, just keep checking it. I'm not saying that we have the typo error on ours, but maybe it did, maybe it didn't.
Oh yeah, and this is just more logistical things. Like, all judges must receive a copy of an annual report if you do decide to give one, and teams will be notified in advance just how many that they'll need to bring. And again, for those of you, especially without competition experience, this is something that can easily get lost when thinking of all the million things you have to do. How are you going to get your annual reports to the judges? You'll see some teams have it down to a T where, they have their presenters, they walk up and they have a separate role, again, as we discussed, for individuals who give the annual reports to judges. So there's so many moving parts into this, but that's just another little tip we should. The last thing that we have to talk about is the Q&A segment. So this is at the end of your presentation when judges are given the opportunity to ask questions about your projects and your team. A lot of success comes from, organization in the sense of assigning topics to students. So that takes a lot of the weight off of individuals knowing that, like, okay, if there's a question about this, we know that Dana's going to answer it. If there's a question about this project, Becky's going to answer it. And also along that lines, we see a lot of teams will have a facilitator of questions. So it'll be one individual who answers every single question that the judge asks in the way of like, oh, thank you for that question. That's a good question. I'm going to pass it over to Amanda to answer. We see a lot of that. It just helps with the fluidity. It doesn't take up too much time, but it mitigates that chance of there being like the stutter step of like, who's going to answer, who's going to do this. And it really helps with the flow of that. Again, practice makes perfect, and do this in front of other audiences. And these things go without saying. The more you do this in front of other individuals who are outside of Enactus, the better you will be prepared. Especially practice presenting to your BAB or to just anybody that's outside of Enactus, somebody that doesn't have, the lens that we do, because that's a lot of the times what judges are. I mean, I was an Enactus student. There aren't many alumni judges though. There are way more partner judges, individuals who come from, our sponsoring companies that don't necessarily have the student Enactus experience. So this is all new for them, and it is a lot of information. So you may not be prepared for the questions that they're asking because they're just a lot different than the way that you've been thinking. So the more you practice that, absolutely the better. But yeah, I think that concludes at least the content that we have. I really thank you guys for hanging out with us and listening to all this. But now, I mean, we do have some time left. I'd love to open the floor to discussions, any best practices, good experiences, bad experiences, and of course, questions that you have for us or Dana.
Yeah, hey, this is Sandy at Evangel. My question is, this will be my first year as the lead advisor for these students. And did you say that there will already be a projector in each room? Because I was thinking in the past that we had to bring our own.
Okay, so the projectors will be available for you to rent there, and I don't think we know yet what that cost will be.
Okay, so we were planning on bringing one, so we should just.
Oh, if you're planning on bringing one, then perfect, you're set.
Right, but there will be carts in the room. Yes. So there's 2 carts that hold the projector. There's 2 per league room, so one for transition, one for the current presenting team. So that which can be bulky to travel with, we'll have there. Oh,
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. All right, I think that's it. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We always welcome feedback. This is kind of a new year for us doing these webinars, and we're trying to see if they're successful and something we should continue to do in the future. If you want to suggest any other ways that we do it or promote it, be more than welcome to have that feedback. But yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much.
And if you think of any other questions, feel free to email your RPM or us. Yep.